Hello and welcome to UPSC IAS BRAIN. Recently, the Government of India has introduced the Prohibition of Child Marriage Amendment Bill 2020 before the Indian Parliament. Now, this bill was sent to a committee for further scrutiny and has not been passed till now. Before this move, the Union Cabinet cleared the proposal to raise minimum marriage age for women from existing 18 to 21 years. More than a year after, Prime Minister Narendra Modi announced the plan during his Independence Day address of 2020. Mr. Modi said, "We are constantly concerned about the health of women and to save the girls from malnutrition." Mr. Modi also said his government had set up a committee to go into the question of minimum marriage age for women. This committee, headed by former chief of Samata Party, Ms. Jaya Jaitley, and finally submitted its report to the Prime Minister's Office and Ministry of Women's and Child Development. In this video, let's look at all that you need to know regarding minimum marriage age. How? We will first look at legal framework and later we will discuss the benefits and concerns and finally way forward. Let me begin by explaining the legal framework. In India, the minimum marriage age was prescribed the first time by Sarada Act 1929. Later, it was renamed as Child Marriage Restraint Act 1929. This law aims to fix the minimum marriage age for girls at 14 years and for boys at 18 years. But remember one thing, this law could not be implemented. Why? Due to British government won't interfere social sentiments like religious beliefs and customs. After independence in 2006, this Child Marriage Restraint Act was renamed by Prohibition of Child Marriage Act. This is because of the government wants to prohibit the child marriages completely instead of restraint. This law was amended to raise the minimum marriage age for girls at 18 years and for boys for 21 years. Now, there may be a question circling in your mind, why the marriage age is different for men and women? Because there is a traditional acceptance in society. The women, the girls, mature 2 or 3 years faster than the men, and boys are expected to be older than the girl. There are various personal laws governing different communities that would also affected as a result of universalization of marriage age. According to Hindu Marriage Act 1955 and Indian Christian Act 1872, both these laws says that the girl can get married only after she attained the age of 18 years and boy would be able to get married only after he attained the age of 21 years. And the Muslim Personal Law 1937 allows marriage if the boy and girl have attained puberty. Now you may be asking one question. Will the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act override all these personal laws? Yes, of course. All these personal laws will have to fall under the constitutional framework and will be subjected to public morality and health. The minimum marriage age can be justified under the public health. Now let us see what are the benefits of this law. India is a vast and vibrant country. Indian culture about many stereotypes. Although there might be a little truth of these stereotypes are rooted in reality. The social stigma that women are housekeepers and should be confined to the four walls of the house. But coming to boys, they have a responsibility to lead the family. And after 21 years, they have entered into the job market. In this patriarchal society, a lot of weightage is given to the men. As we know all, the Indian Constitution says that government shall not deny to any person in India equality before the law or equal protection of the laws. And also, the government shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds only of sex. Then, why this gender disparity? What is this discrimination? Now, this Prohibition of Child Marriage Amendment Bill brings the gender disparity and resolves such stereotype. And another important thing is an early age of marriage, consequently early age of pregnancies, and also have an impact on nutritional levels of mothers and their children and their overall health and mental well-being. It is also an impact on infant mortality rate and maternal mortality rate. For those who are not aware, infant mortality rate is the number of deaths per 1,000 live births of children under the age of 1, and maternal mortality rate is defined as the number of maternal deaths during 1 lakh live births. On financial front, opportunity doors will be opened up for women to pursue higher education and become financially empowered, thus resulting in more egalitarian society will be formed. Increasing the marriages will be pushed the marriage is higher and she will be complete her graduation, she will be entered into job market. Ultimately, women participation in labor market is best way of empowering them. With a rise in the age at marriage, they may be able to participate in the labor market before the marriage. All this is expected to be reduce the fertility rate. Why? This is only because of we do not have unlimited resources. Rising the legal age of marriage is an indirect attempt to address the other gender inequalities, such as girls being pulled out of the schools for marriages. There are few concerns over this bill. At present, child marriages are happening throughout India, even after having the Prohibition of Child Marriage Act 2006. As per the National Family Health Survey, one-fourth of the women who aged 20 to 24 years were married before attaining the age of 18 years. After the pandemic, the number of child marriages increased significantly. So the problem lies in the implementation. The law alone cannot bring the changes in the society without the proper implementation. And also, root causes should be addressed before bringing law. We also discuss why government wants to rise the minimum marriage age. What the government says? Malnutrition is the reason to increase the marriage age. If girls are married off at early age, they suffer from malnutrition. But reason for malnutrition is poverty, not age. Early ages mostly occurs in lower income families residing in rural areas that lack of proper access to healthcare and education. So, women from such families may be more malnourished than the urban counterparts who are generally better off and are married at higher age. In India, generally parents arrange the marriages with same religion or caste. But there is an important thing that you need to know here. Young couples sometimes run away from the home to marry the sweetheart, hoping to escape harassment and emotional blackmailing from family. If they are over 18, their marriage will be sound as legal and cannot be disputed by parents. But what happens now? An increase in the legal age for marriage will be weaponized to serve honor caste community controls against young couples while not stopping underage marriages. Now coming to age of consent. The famous episode which shook the entire country by terror in December 2012, the Nirbhaya gang rape case. One of the minors was sentenced of 3 years imprisonment in a reform facility and other rapists were hanged. But the juvenile or minor was not hanged. Why he got released? According to Juvenile Justice Act 2000, says that all the children less than 18 years must be treated equally and maximum sentence for them is 3 years only. So he served his sentence as per the provisions of this law. But later, in 2015, this law was amended to minor in the age group of 16 to 18 years to be treated as adults in the case of heinous crimes. And recently, Madras High Court suggested the government to lower the age of consent and says the government you should be considered it seriously. The fact remains that many of the cases of sexual assault reported to police dealing with the 16 to 18 years old children are consensual in nature. This is because of many of young men being packed off to reform homes on the basis of fake complaints by the parents of this sweetheart. Let's take a bull by horse. You can drive a car at 18, you can vote at 18, your consent for data will be at 18. This is the argument that has been presented by some of members of parliament like Mr. Asaduddin Owaisi. On the other hand, few people said if we don't marry them off early, they may become wayward. But why that logic applicable only to betis? What about the men? Let's go back to my earlier one, the logic of 18. What is the drinking age in Mumbai? What is the drinking age which is legally permissible in Delhi? Why it is different in every state? What the drinking consumption of alcohol? Why are certain beverages, drinks, etc. are not suitable for children or below a certain age? Because it's a health. It is not about community. It is not about personal law, etc. It is not just only about the girls, but also about the mother's progeny once they become mother. This is what the committee has decided. Education is the most powerful weapon to bring the change in the society. Improving access to educational is the key delaying to child marriages, and skills and business training as well as sex education in schools will be beneficial to all. So the government should look at increasing girls' access to schools and colleges as well as their transportation to these institutions from remote areas. And finally, the government needs to undertake large-scale awareness programs to explain to parents why delaying marriages by a few years to let their daughter study is important. And we also need to explain to parents that girl is not a burden. She can also make them proud and she can get a job and take care of them.